Hello, and welcome to tutorial 4 of your Web Development for Beginners course. We hope you're enjoying it so far. In the previous tutorial, we covered the basics of CSS. Now it is time to turn it up a notch with advanced CSS. Yeah, yesterday was just the tip of the iceberg. Today we are going to show you what else you can do with CSS, from adding and styling images to setting custom fonts. By the end of this tutorial, you'll have a solid understanding of how HTML and CSS work together. A key step in your journey to becoming a web developer. Ready for more CSS? Let's jump right in. We are back in our project, and the first thing that we'll do today is replacing all those dry gray colored images with something more colorful. So let's go to our screen. This is all the code that we wrote yesterday, and yeah, this is how our website looked at the end of the day. So you see all these 150 by 150, 300 by 300, the placeholder images that we used to not create a distraction for ourselves when we are working. Now it is finally time to get rid of those and put in something colorful. Now here are a couple of options for you. You could just go to an image sharing website and pick up some freely available images that you can use in your project. Or you could use the images that we have selected so that your project looks exactly the same as ours for now. In the video description, you'd find a Google Drive link. You can click that. Here is what you would see. You can click on download. That will download it to your computer. Just click it to unzip it, and then you'll have the folder. Now you have to move the whole folder to your portfolio folder, which is where we have the index.html and styles.css. On Mac, you can just drag this image folder in your portfolios folder. So you have this in here. And now you can close this and go back to your text editor. And here you see you have a new folder here with images and then the 5 images that we are going to be using. So if you go back to the HTML, we are going to be replacing these 5 links, this and the 4 here, with the ones from our folder. So currently it is using something from the web. To use something that is locally available, we do not need the https // whatever. We just say images and / and then profile -picture. Let me see what the name is. Okay, so profile-picture.jpg. Then you do the same for the other images. Project-1.jpg. Prefix that with an images because it is in the images directory. Just copy it everywhere, and then you can just change the number. Simple, right? Okay, so now we can go back to our page and refresh it, and boom, we have some colorful images in our project. Now that we have our images in place, let's style them a bit. So onto our screens, we have the profile picture here and some images. So for the profile picture, I'll make it a bit smaller and then add some shadows and some hover effects to it. And I'll explain it as we go along. So the first step would be to adding a class name to the image. Let's keep it simple. Profile picture. Copy this. Go to CSS. The bottom. So we want the image to be rounded and not square like it is right now. So we can do border radius 50%. Then the width and the height would be 150 pixels. And then the image would also have some box shadow. So So we have the box shadow here, and we have given it a special transition property because of something that we are going to use that we have not seen yet. So let's see what that is. So profile, picture, and we put a colon here and we say hover. And what this will select, we're writing a selector, but this is a special kind of selector that that contains properties that only become active when you actually perform an action. So when we say colon hover, the properties here come into action when we actually hover on the image. So you must have seen images on website. When you hover over them with your mouse, they do something, they become bigger or they have a deeper shadow or something. All of that is done with the hover pseudo selector. So let's put in box shadow. Let's make the shadow a bit different. Okay, so you have a box shadow here and a box shadow here, but this one only becomes active when someone hovers on it using their mouse pointer. So let's see that in action. If we go back to our page and refresh, you see the image is now cropped to a circle, and if you hover on it and look carefully, you'll have some added shadow coming in when you actually move the pointer on the image. So that's simply because of our box shadow property and the transition property. So next up, we are going to add some styling to the images in the portfolio section. It would be similar to the styling that we have added already to the profile picture, but a bit more advanced, just to see how far we can go with our styling. What we are going to be doing is we are going to be adding a title text to all of those images, so that when someone hovers on them, you see the name of the project itself, and it vanishes once you hover away from it. So let's see how we can make that possible. So first of all, let's head back to our code editors. And so each image will now contain its own heading. So for that, we'll need to nest the image itself in a div. So let's do that. Class, Okay, so what we have done is we have taken the image and actually nested it inside of a div and then added an h4, which would be the title of the project. That will be shown when you hover on it. And for now, I just added project 1, project 2, project 3, but this could be anything. This could also be an anchor link that takes you to the actual project. So let's go back to our page and refresh, and we see the text is showing below our image, which is what we expect because we haven't styled it yet. So let's go back and do that. For typing. So we are done with the typing, and what we have done here is we have nested the image along with the heading. That's the title of the project, and then we have given everything a class name so that we can select them. And in our styles, what we have done is we have made the image wrapper, which is the div outside of the image and the text, relative, because we want to float. We want the title text to not be below the image, but to be on top of it. So the way we do that in CSS is we use the position absolute on an element that is inside of a position relative. So you have the wrapper here and you have the relative positioning. And then for something to be floating that can be positioned anywhere inside of that relative div, we can just make it position absolute. And then we can use properties top, left, right, and bottom to position stuff exactly where we want inside of that box, inside of our image in this case. So we have top 50%, left 50%, which means it is 50% from the top, 50% from left, so kind of center. And then we just correct the error a bit, because if it starts at 50%, it's going to go all the way to the side. So we need to bring it back so that it's like exactly in the center. And then we set some properties, like we make the color of the text white, we make it hidden by default and only visible when we hover on it using the hover pseudo selector. And we just set the same transition property as earlier to make the transition a bit more smoother, as opposed to the text popping up as soon as you go to the image, hover on the image. So if we go back and refresh, you see when I hover on the image, we have the title of the project come up, and it slowly goes away when we take our mouse pointer away from the image. Now we are going to change the default fonts that we got from Chrome. So if we go to our website, you see everything has a specific font, but we didn't set it. The browser gave us the font. So we want to have something nicer than this. So in general, you can include fonts in a variety of different ways. One of the easiest is to just use Google Fonts. So in Google Fonts, the fonts.google.com, I have already selected a couple of fonts that we are going to be using. So once you select them, then you click embed, you get this link here. I'll also put this link in the video description so that you can just copy it from there. But copy this here, and then you go back to your page in the head section and you paste it. Save it, and you should be able to close this and refresh, and nothing happens because we are not using the font. Now we'll need to actually use it. So the way this will work is you have two fonts here. You see Noto Sans and you have Roboto Mono. So the way we'd do it is, for everything else, we'd use a font called Noto Sans. So this would be our default font for body text, for list items, for everything. But for headings, for headlines, H1, H2, H3, H4, we are going to be using Roboto Mono. So you just need to declare that in your CSS. So go to your CSS file, go to the top of this page. You don't need to be at the top, but it's good to just have these global stuff at the very beginning. So make some room here, body, and here you say font family Noto Sans. So we have declared the font family Noto Sans on the body element, and we have a backup font sans serif. Now it is interesting to note that when we declare the font family on the body, it gets inherited by all the elements that are contained in the body, which for us, for our purposes, is like the whole page. How does that work? That works by cascade. It's called cascading style sheets because anything that you declare on the top level automatically cascades to every other element within it. But now we should declare the H1, H2, H3, H4 font family as Roboto Mono. So because the headings are more specific than body, the Roboto Mono would take precedence over the body font, and for the headlines, we would see Roboto Mono as the font. So if we go back to our page and refresh, there you have it. The font changed, and for the headings, we have the Roboto Mono font, and everywhere else we have the Noto Sans font. So you can actually verify that by right-clicking, inspect, John Doe, and you see here H1, H2, H3, H4, the font is Roboto Mono. And you can actually uncheck mark this here to actually remove the font style, and you see the font changes. So this is our web page so far, and if you think about it, it's not looking that bad. But there is one section that is still a bit unrefined, so to speak. So that's the footer section. We haven't really done any work there. So let's fix that in this part, and let's give it some styling and make it a little more symmetrical. So in our code, we remove the email from here and actually add it within like a small heading of its own so that it looks a bit nicer. So H4, and then we say email, and similarly for message, H4, and then we say message, and we see how it looks. Okay, not bad. We also need the button, submit button here on the new line. So we make it into a div, submit button wrapper, close it, and then fix the indentation. Okay, so let's refresh and go back, and oops. So now we have everything nicely on its own new line. Let's give it some CSS styles to make it look even better. So we select the input and the text area elements, and we just use the HTML element selector from CSS as opposed to class or ID selector, because we just have one form on this page, so it should be unique enough. So input and text area, and there we go, padding. So just make some good spacing and have some nice curvy borders for the input and the text area. And for the button, the way we select the button is we select the input, but only the one with the type submit. Oops, submit. And the way this works is this part here, form and input, selects all the inputs. We actually have two inputs on this page, so this one and this one. But then we make it a bit more specific by saying only the type submit. So that's the only type submit input that we have, and we are successfully like pinning down the rule to this one element that we want to style. So I just want to give it a width of 250 pixels. And for the wrapper, we just make it, just add some margin to it so that it does not stick to the other elements. X0, and so if we now go back and refresh, nice. So you see how we have some nice round borders on these elements and the button. So that's good. So our website is looking very pretty now. We can actually go a bit further and do a little more so that it looks a tad bit even prettier. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be changing the background color of our website to suit the overall theme and kind of the images that we have on the page. And I'll be fixing the font color. Currently it is black, which is not bad at all, but if you want to make it a little softer, you can make it some shade of dark blue. And the last part is I'll be adding some horizontal lines in between the sections so that they are more distinct. Okay, so let's go ahead and do all of those things and see what difference it makes to the overall feel of the website. Okay, so we are here. Oh, and I just noticed that I have made this H1, but I think it should be H3 because all the titles of these sections are H3. So let's just go ahead and fix that. Here, so H3, and H3, save it, refresh. Okay, so now it is looking much like the other titles. Now let's fix the background color. So on the body where we declared the font family, just add a background property and we gave it okay. So I have come up with this color with my color palette, and let's see how this looks in the browser. Nice. Next up, we just create some spacing in between the different sections so that they are there's a bit more air in between them. So the way we do that is we select the container class and then we do a child selector on it, and then we say div. So this selects all the children that are inside of the container, which are divs. And then we say margin 20 pixels auto. So that creates 20 pixels on top and 20 pixels on bottom margin so that the sections are a bit more away from each other. So if we go back and refresh, yeah, that looks good. Cool. Next is we need to add an HR. So HR stands for horizontal rule. This is an HTML element which creates this horizontal line in between content. So let's just try it for one. Go back, refresh, and you see this line come up. We need this line for every section. Let's do that quickly for every section. Enter. Go down. Cool. So if we go here, and yeah, we have a horizontal line for every section, but it's a bit out of place in terms of the styling. So we just put some styles on the HR element so that it looks a bit more softer to your eyes. So we go to our CSS file, maybe at the bottom, you just write HR. Okay, we are using this special property called background image, and we are using a CSS function here called linear gradient. What that does is it creates a gradient for us. So going right, we have completely transparent, then we have the transparency decreased a bit, so it shows up, and then again we have completely transparent color. This is the black color 000, and what this would do is it would create this nice transition from completely transparent to black to transparent again. So let's go to our page and refresh. So refresh and nothing comes up, which means we probably have some error in our code. So we go back and check background image, gradient to right, RGBA, that's incorrect. So RGBA, and we save it, we go back, and now we should see we should see our beautiful horizontal rule. So you see how the transition works? It's looking really nice. That brings us to the end of the tutorial. We have covered a massive amount of ground over the last 4 tutorials. Congratulations! In the next tutorial, we'll be making your site dynamic with the use of JavaScript, the third and final language we'll be investigating in this course. Ready for variables, functions, and operators? Me too.